Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the channel. We're going to be going over everything you need to know about AMC stock here in this video, and things look pretty dang good today. Honestly, can't complain. AMC stock is above that 50-day moving average. Even though small cap stocks are underperforming, AMC stock is not as bad. Now, it's not a great day for AMC. Definitely not a terrible day as well. Today, you're going to have a major event coming with NVIDIA's GTC conference that happens, I believe, at 1 p.m. Pacific time. It might be 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. If you actually go to the conference website itself, I didn't see whether it was EST or PST. So yeah, it's going to be happening nonetheless in 3 hours. So yeah, that was Pacific time. So right at about 4 p.m. today, you will be hearing from Jensen Huang, the keynote speaker, and this is the first time it's live in like 5 years. I heard, could be wrong on that, but you are is it PDT? PDT. Okay, maybe it's not PST. Nonetheless, Wall Street is expecting a lot. They're expecting some form of guidance or something, okay? And I think a lot of what you've seen with NVIDIA has been the buy the rumor event since NVIDIA's last earnings. Now, that becomes problematic for your big tech stocks if indeed you do see NVIDIA really not give us much, right? If they announce a new product, they don't really give us too much details on pricing or on units that they expect to sell. That could be a little bit of a disappointment. Now, maybe you could make the argument that anything NVIDIA says at this point could be a disappointment because expectations are so high. And I believe ever since really last earnings, NVIDIA has been trading, well, heading into this event on the buy the rumor kind of trading mentality, and maybe you're set up for a sell the news event. Now, that's speculation on my part. We'll have to wait and see. Inevitably, ultimately, if nothing really changes in the markets, but let's say you see NVIDIA or some of your GPU AI stocks start to fall, that could turn into a positive catalyst, a very positive catalyst for AMC, because it could cause a dispersion in our markets. Let me point you to this chart that I actually bring up almost every single video, at least on a week-by-week basis. A couple times a week, I'll point this out. It's the percent of stocks trading above their 50-day moving average. Currently, you're at 52.5%. Back when you were kind of seeing a broad-based rally in everything, that was through really November until about December 28th. You were seeing just a broad-based rally. Everything was doing well. Everything was really going well for all the stocks in the markets, essentially. Well, inevitably, what ended up happening is we went from pricing in 7 rate cuts to pricing in 4 to pricing in 3. Now it looks like we're pricing in 2 rate cuts. So what's happened? Small cap stocks, a stock like AMC, has gotten beaten up in 2024. Look at Tesla, down 30%. Minus today, you're still down like 25% year to date, just since the start of 2024. A lot of that has to do with rate cuts getting priced out of our markets. Now, when Fed Jerome Powell speaks on Wednesday, I think he is going to throw in the optionality of raising rates again if inflation continues to rise. But that's really a whole different can of worms that we'll talk about later on throughout this week. I've made a couple videos already on Powell and my expectations. I do think there is a decent chance that we actually do get a rug pull. Could be like a gray swan event, something that we all know could happen, that not a lot of people are actually expecting to happen. But nonetheless, back to kind of the argument that I'm making here. If you do see big tech fall, then that could be really good for AMC. In theory here, your average stock, this chart would start to rise, or your big tech names would come down and match kind of what this chart looks like, which would suggest maybe 10% downside across the board for all of your big tech names, and maybe not as much downside for AMC. So you either get this catch up or catch down trade. And I think that's the real thing that we need to be watching for. Do the rest of the markets catch up to big tech? And if that's the case, markets could go a lot higher from here if we start to see broad participation. I think that really depends on Powell. If we see a catch down in our markets, big tech starts to fall, that could start to happen based on the NVIDIA GTC conference as well as Powell on Wednesday. So I think those two major events are important. You also have the Bank of Japan that is expected to raise rates for the first time coming tomorrow. I also spoke on this in the last video. There's $4 trillion of Japanese wealth, Japanese money in our markets, in foreign markets. You could start to see Japanese investors start to pull back some of that money and bring it back onshore to Japan as their central bank starts to raise rates. And that could also be problematic for the bond market. And guess what is selling off today? The bond market. TLT is down 1/3%. And honestly, if Powell goes the way that I expect and the Japanese, central bank starts to actually raise rates as Wall Street is expecting, then maybe you do actually see TLT continue to fall, rates going higher, and maybe a cool down overall for markets. So it's actually interesting today that TLT is reacting. TLT is falling and yields are moving higher. When TLT falls, that means yields are going higher. 10-year Treasury yields up about 3 basis points and really have been rising ever since the start of 2024. But even over the course of really the last 10 days or so, 10-year Treasury yields have went from about 4.08% to 4.3, almost 4%. If you were rounding here, you'd round to 4.34%. So 10-year Treasury yields have been rising into the Fed. The markets were falling previously. Not so much today. The NASDAQ is up about 1.3%, actually regaining this bullish channel, this bullish trend line here. So that's a very interesting development today alone. We'll have to wait and see where things shake out today and after hours tomorrow, really heading into the Fed. But you're back to bullish in the short-term kind of channel here that we do have, which I think is fascinating heading into a big risk event like Powell. Maybe this is kind of a blow off top last ditch effort for the market makers to kind of screw everyone in the options market before you do see that final move. So be on the lookout for that. That could also be a little on the problematic side. Now, again, back to AMC. AMC stock is up 0.5%, roughly, whereas the broader markets, while the Russell 2000 is really the underperformer, the Russell is down about 0.2%. The NASDAQ is up 1.17%. The S&P is up almost 1%, and the Dow is up 0.36%. So definitely starting to get a little bit of activity in the broader kind of tech sector. But again, that really comes down to NVIDIA's GTC conference and where we go from there. Now, AMC stock and the data specifically related to AMC, it looks pretty good. We have volume today of 61.23% calls, 38.77% puts. Option activity from hedge funds and institutions. You have one order totaling $11,000. It is a positive order value of 100%. So that was a bullish trade that you did see today. We're obviously going to have to give it some time and we'll see where things shake out by the end of the day today. But so far, so good. So far, Wall Street's feeling pretty good on AMC. What's also, I guess, encouraging to some people is the short interest is rising to 13.05%, back to kind of the high of this recent cycle. Short interest hit 7% on the lows. Now it's back to 13%. That's good, I would say. If AMC starts to rally and people start to, look at AMC short interest for a potential short squeeze trade, they're going to look at 13%. They're going to say, okay, that's decently high. But if we start to trend to like 15 or 20%, that's where things get a little bit better even for AMC. Now, if you've been here for a long time, then there's likely many more shorts that are unaccounted for than what we see here, but unfortunately we cannot prove that, so I don't like to lead with that, right? You should always know what the provable data looks like, and then you can speculate to what you think the actual data is. Specifically with AMC, he is not happy today. AMC stock does have about $151 million currently in short positions. Days to cover sitting at 2.22, 34.22 million shares that are currently sold short. Shares out on loan, 45.35 million. Cost to borrow, 1.08%. Again, this is the average over the past 3 months. The current cost to borrow fees around 3%. I think most stocks are around that, right? Unless it's like a super stable company, then you're going to be at like 1% cost to borrow fees. I mean, there's also the supply and demand aspect. I think there's typically a lot of demand to short AMC. So there usually is a higher cost to borrow fees than what we normally like get represented here on Ortex. Now, utilization sitting at 61.24%, and you do have a short score of 67.45. Now, let's take a look at the stock twits sentiment barometers. Now, I don't think these are all too important, but I do like to look at them to see how people are feeling about AMC. Now, AMC today's sentiment is neutral. Yesterday was at 53. Today is at 49. Message volume yesterday was at 39. Today it's at 43. And your participation ratio is at 55 today, which is mainly in line with what we have seen recently. As far as the Stocko tracker data today, it does not look like we have seen a lot of rolling over from last week's expiration. That last week's expiration was hundreds of thousands of calls and puts that did expire worthless. Most of them expired worthless. And typically, when you see a large expiration like that, it can lead you into more volatility in the next upcoming week. Because if there's a lot of rolling over, do people buy more calls? Do they buy puts? Are they going in the money, out the money? There's a lot of different variables, obviously, that happen there. And again, when you're coming off of hundreds of thousands of options that just expired, whether they were exercised or rolled over, I think that is, you know, something that can give you a little bit more volatility. Now, for this week, you haven't seen a lot of options pop up yet. And I believe by the end of the day today or tomorrow, that's when you'll see more of the option activity start to actually pop up for those individuals last week that had options that did roll them over. Now, you have in the money calls at about 2,500 currently, out the money calls at about 34,000, in the money puts at 7,500, and out the money puts at about 16,000. So decent numbers there, but nothing that's too abnormal, nothing too crazy, nothing like last week's expiration. Now, AMC stock is currently at $4.45 per share. Your 50-day moving average is at $4.43 per share. So you're 2 cents higher than that as of right now. So, you know, that's great, right? You want to stay above that 50-day moving average. Now, I don't know what's going to happen into the end of the day today. I would imagine since stocks, then like the NASDAQ, triple Qs, well, they're currently up about 1.13% as I'm looking at it here over on the charts. It wouldn't surprise me if you do get a sell-off into the close, heading into Jensen Huang actually giving a speech, and that is NVIDIA's CEO. And you're starting to see a little bit of a sell-off right now. Does that hit AMC? I would imagine if the markets sell off here, AMC stock is likely going to sell off as well. But if we do close above that 50-day moving average, that would be fantastic. And really at this point, AMC just has to close green or neutral, just unchanged, which highly unlikely, or slightly green. The better the green, the obviously better off we are, but you just gotta close green today. And then you're gonna close above that 50-day moving average. And well, the last time that happened was the day before earnings. I think if Adam Aron would have done the right thing, the obvious thing to me, I think they should have done this a long time ago, but gave us a commitment not to dilute shareholders, AMC stock would have ran big time following earnings. Maybe AMC is due for another run here. We'll have to wait and see. The RSI is currently sitting at 48.76, so pretty neutral overall. And the MACD looks kind of bullish. Though, today the MACD is going positive, but still in the grand scope of things, it's far too early to use the MACD as kind of a leading indicator for a rally. But the RSI would suggest there is quite the upside if we do indeed actually start to rally. So let me know what you think about this information down below in the comment section. Hit the like button as well as subscribe to the channel. You guys have a fantastic rest of your day, and I will see you in the next one.